Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Chris O Show. You will be listening to it on Spotify or on YouTube or on one of our local media outlets that share, or on my blog/website, which is getting a little facelift, and we'll announce that later. Anyways, so that being said, today a very special guest, a wonderful lady, a repeat guest on the show who we love to have, Kyla Taylor of Launch and Prosper, aka LNP.
Thank you. LNP is good.
And so for those who don't know, Kyla runs a very successful business kind of and I don't know, like, describe what your business does, because you do so much stuff.
Well, we're a business consulting agency for SME, which is small, medium enterprise in the private sector. And we work with nonprofits as well. And we're consultants that focus on growth strategy. And that encompasses a whole bunch of other things. So really, we're just problem solvers that know how to help people identify where their issues are and capitalize on their market opportunities. So that's exciting. It's exciting work.
It
Yeah.
is exciting work. Now, you've helped several people be successful over the years, which is awesome. We don't like to say clients' names, but if you want to find out more, you can just call Kyla and her team and get in touch. That being said, you were just telling me about some cool stuff happening. Your business has grown. So what's that like right now? Like, you got your new team together.
They're camera shy. They're not camera shy. They're used to being on Zoom, but I think they're camera shy for a podcast. Although I didn't really extend the invite, so I promise I will. Hi team, you have to jump on next time with Chris.
There you go.
We are so excited because at the end of the day, we've really moved into a public relations component of our firm.
Nice.
So traditionally, our core focus is all things business strategy, finance, operations, market positioning is part of it. And we dabbled for a while in marketing and digital marketing, just to support external drivers. And what we found was that the larger the businesses are that we begin to work with, the more reputational risk they encounter, the more public relations are required. And the more larger nonprofits that we've been collaborating and working with, the more stakeholder and in investor stakeholder relations that are happening. So all that means a lot of conversations are happening and a lot of media is happening. And so I've really shifted from, I think there's a public perception about what marketing is and what marketing isn't.
Yeah.
And so we're really taking the bull by the horn and moving into very strategic communications.
Mm-hmm.
And marketing falls in there. But so Jason Ross, he's on our website. You can jump over to see our people. But Jason's joined us about 4 months ago. And what I love about him is he's come from private and public sector. And notably, he was in the States running he was the senior communications strategist for a company out of Harlem, a nonprofit organization called Union Settlement. And it's pretty cool. Like, you got to look it up, Chris. It's a lot of stakeholders that their organization was servicing vulnerable populations and underprivileged peoples, including entrepreneurs, students, elderly, you name it. So they did a lot of outreach. And so a lot of partnerships there were happening, right? Partnerships with Mount Sinai Hospital, partnerships with local politician, state and town level and whatnot. So he's got a lot of depth, but what I love about working with Jason is he's got a business strategic mindset, but he has a very humanitarian tendency as well. So he's very purposeful.
Yeah.
And when we think about positioning, it was cool because we put out a post that we needed a communications person, and I never thought in a million years he'd apply. And so the irony is our business was working on our positioning.
Yeah.
And our positioning attracted somebody of that caliber, which is awesome. Fantastic, right? And so so now we're doing a lot of work positioning other people.
I love it. That's
Yeah,
sweet.
so that's cool. And then you have to meet Nadia. Nadia's come on board in our marketing and advertising department, so more along the lines of media. She's
Yeah.
a film background, incredible storyteller, and also very purpose driven and very much about getting to the heart of the story, right? So
Yeah.
we recognize that copywriting, nobody's reading. I
Yeah.
mean, we can argue that long form copy is still there, and we'll get to that with you, right? Like
Yeah.
if you have incredible long form copy and you're articling and you've got a lot of educational and human interest happening there, that's great.
Yeah.
But I think complementary to that is video, is film,
Yeah.
as a medium for telling the story, whether it's
Yeah.
for an investment pitch or whether it's a go-to-market sales, a commercial, right? Commercial advertising or educational. So that's super exciting. Yeah. So the communications team is really beefed up, and then our operations team is beefed up too. You've met Laura, so Laura's fantastic.
Yeah,
She's
Laura's awesome. Yeah.
she's amazing. She's our coordinator. She's our business operations manager, which basically means she wrangles us all, which is fantastic. But she's a great client coordinator. She's fantastic. She's so yeah. So that is why I
Awesome.
can hang out with you at 4:30 on a Wednesday.
I know, because of your new awesome team. But I will say I do agree that I think that some of the shorter kind of written content is kind of becoming redundant. It's becoming a little bit boring. It's becoming a little bit like there's stuff that I write that you could literally read with a video going on, and it would be interesting to hear someone saying it because I'm like trying to talk like it's almost a conversational style of writing. And I think that works in marketing too. Like when I write dockside stories, it's a more of a informational, tell the story brand, like tell the brand story. Right. Because I think I think you're right about that. And I think video complements that, and that complements video because you're almost writing the script. Right. And so some people will read the script if it's interesting enough and the content is quality enough. And some people will watch the video if it's interesting enough and if the content's good enough. Right. And I think you're 100% right about that. I know sometimes as writers, we can shoot ourselves in the foot, be like, oh, everything's video, or this and that. But it's like, no, if you're still doing good content, people will follow, people will read it. Just make it interesting, make it, you make it like, you make it personable and original and an extension of who you are, and people will follow that and people will read that, right? So
well, and there's distribution channels. Does it belong on social media, or would you rather read it in the post? Do you want to read it on a news feed? Do you want to read it in LinkedIn? Like, I love reading. I still read a paper newspaper. I read physical newspaper on Saturdays and or on Sunday mornings. We'll take the Saturday paper and read it Sunday morning. Burn it Monday night. Yeah.
It's true. It's true. But it's true. That's awesome.
But I love it. I love that long form articling. So because it's informative, and I love great journalism. I love reading fantastic journalism. And so, that kind of makes me want to ask you what's happening in your world, speaking of journalism.
Oh, all kinds of weird and wonderful things. So me personally, I've decided we talked about this briefly when I was kind of weighing the decision, but decided we're going to change from muskokaunlimited.com. We're going to change it over. It'll be the Chris O Show right now. So this is the funny part. So it's going to end up being the chrisoshow.me, like .me, and the chrisoshow.blog, which will have the podcast and all the written content and everything. And it will still have contributors coming and joining. But I'm like, everything has Muskoka in it now. You get lost in the crowd. It's like not unique Muskoka anymore. No dissing, whatever, but whatever. They could take it how they want. But it's not so unique anymore, right? I hate and unique isn't even unique. Like I tell people, don't use that word. It's boring. Like it's so redundant and it's so overplayed. And bespoke is coming that way too. So just stop it, folks. Stop it. You're not as special as you think you are. So, anyways, that's a joke. You're supposed to laugh at that joke, Kyla. You're not supposed to ignore the funny joke.
I'm trying to decide if it's politically correct to laugh.
It is politically correct. Let's not, we are not politically correct here. We're friendly, we're loving, we're supportive of everyone, but we're not politically correct. Um, no, so we're gonna change up and we're gonna do it that's more, the podcast, the written content, the pictures, everything is gonna be, as part of the Chris O show. Because let's face it, you're still getting entertained, in some
Yeah.
cases edutained, and you're still getting all the good stuff, right? And it just, now it's like, it feels more natural. I think that everyone trying to force Muskoka into all their products is just taking
Mhm.
away the allure to it. You get lost in the shuffle, right? So now it's like got to come out and be like, what's true to you? Who are you? And be you,
Mhm.
and shout out to even our friends at the Doppler. I love that they did a Doppler. They didn't just try to be something they weren't, right?
It's
And
not Muskoka Doppler. Yeah.
and so even the Muskoka, like, so it's the Huntsville Doppler and then the Muskoka Doppler, whatever. I'm okay with that because it's like, they were,
Mhm.
everyone just calls them the Doppler. They have
Mhm.
that unique identity. Oh, there's the word.
Yeah.
They have that identity. They
They
have
have, yes.
their own identity and they went with it. And I give props to Hugh and Tamara and Matt for building that up, right? So even
Mhm.
Dockside is not like, there's nothing, there's a Muskoka edition, there's a Simcoe edition, you know what I mean? It's not
Yeah.
just all about, and then they have a Lakeside magazine. So yes, it's cottage country, but it's not, it's not just another Muskoka thing, right? Because everywhere you turn, there's a Muskoka something, right? So
It's interesting that you say that, like, that there is a brand of Muskoka. There is a brand that relates to tourism, to cottage
yeah,
country, to lifestyle. But how many more businesses are not being well represented here? If we think
yeah.
about what people think about Muskoka, I'm working with a simulation technology company
Oh, cool.
in this region, and you would never find them if you were to type in, Muskoka technology companies. Like, it
Yeah,
just doesn't,
yeah.
not part of their SEO. I mean, we're exporting globally. Their intellectual property is all over the map, and yet
Very
they're
cool.
they're tucked away in a part of Muskoka that I will not disclose. But
Yes.
like,
Yeah, don't disclose.
there's a lot of incredible business up here.
Yeah,
And I think I'm very much focused on promoting businesses
yeah,
that are exportable,
yeah,
that are export beyond Muskoka. And again, there's a certain sector that belong
yeah,
in leveraging the name and leveraging the brand of Muskoka, but
sure.
how pigeonholed can you become?
Well, that's the problem. And that's where I think that, and we talked about this too. And it was starting to just dawn on me. It was like, oh my gosh, like this is just kind of, my Google stats are going up, but they should be higher. And I'm like, why
Yeah.
are they not being higher? Well, there's a Muskoka audio video who's actually called Muskoka Unlimited Audio Video. I'll give them a
Right.
props. Yeah, right. I'll give them props. That's actually their official business name. Now they've always gone as Muskoka Audio Video,
Right.
but
Right.
they actually have that. So then they get lost, I get lost, everyone gets lost, right? And it's like, oh no, let's do something that's more like out there, and like we talked about, it's like, I tend to be more of a view from here. We'll talk about international things, we'll talk about national
Yeah.
things, we'll talk about, social items from that just matter to society at large. But then we'll do hyper local things, like I'll interview Elena Renwick about a show she's doing for an art show,
Yeah.
or whatever, or promote the local soccer teams or whoever that's doing something and write about them, right? So it's
But
like,
you can, yeah. Sorry to
you can
interrupt you.
be that. You can be, no, interrupt. You can
No,
be
no, no.
all of that, right? So
And this is the part that I've been trying to help people understand. You're doing exactly a great job, because you're creating a brand that's scalable
yes.
with an element of being hyper local. So
Yeah.
you could scale Chris O into anything, and
Yeah.
you could say, I'm the guy that knows how to tap in quickly into a small town.
Yeah.
And here's how, and so we've got the hyper local goods here, the
Yeah.
hyper local goods there. And
Yeah.
I think that's fantastic. And I mean, really, if you focus more on your own thought leadership and the thought leadership of your contributors,
Yes.
it's going to reach a different audience. So
100%.
who is your
And I don't think you need to have a target if you're well-rounded enough, especially with media stuff. I think too many times you get people who are like, I'm going to go after the, you know, the male audience 25 to 35, or I'm going to go after 55 plus, or I'm going to go, but I don't think you have to. If you're doing good content that's well-rounded and engaging, for you can do it so that anybody can enjoy it. You can do it so that anybody would be interested and might take away from what you're doing on almost, maybe not everything, but like 80% of it or 85% of it. Like,
Mm,
who doesn't want to read about their grandkid or their kid doing something in school sports? Who doesn't have an opinion on what's happening with our taxes at the federal
yeah,
level or provincial level? What's happening in real estate? Everybody has an opinion on that. Everybody wants it. It doesn't, like, anyone who's got a home or who's looking to
yeah.
buy a home has an interest in what's happening. So I think you can actually target a wider, like, say, 25 to 65 audience,
Mhm.
with the majority of what you do, while having those niche spots. But for whatever reason, I mean, it's probably a lot of the soccer moms who have coached their kids over the years that are telling their friends, hey, go, and right. But
Can I put my consultant hat on?
sure.
Okay. Have you heard of client segmentation, customer segmentation before? The
No.
term, this is the term we throw around. So interesting thing that happens. I appreciate the broad brushstroke, right? Because
Yeah.
you have a heart for inclusivity. So what I'm hearing is you really are trying to include every member of our community so that they feel they can find themselves in your work. And
Yeah.
I love that. I
Consent.
think it's
Yeah.
fantastic, right? However, from a business standpoint, and if you're advertising, now I'm going to become a bit of a capitalist here. Having certain targets, being able to segment your population is actually fairly important because you can hone in on each customer segmentation. So let's take that broad brushstroke of, 20 something to 60 something.
Yeah.
What's important to a 20-year-old may not be important whatsoever to a 60-year-old.
Yeah. That's
It
true.
doesn't mean you can't have different columns. Like,
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
break it as though and that the analogy I'm going to throw out there is a newspaper, right?
Yeah.
So, that's why we have segments in the newspaper as well. So back in the day, I was part of a team that were working on customer segmentation for one of the big five banks.
Yeah.
And we looked at a segmentation that were, the 20 to 34s, the 35 to 39s, the 40 to 49s, and then it got a bit broader, right? So then once you're at, 55 to 65, and we looked at each segment of the population and said, what's important to them?
Mm-hmm.
What are their challenges? Do they know what their challenges are? And how can our service offers
Mm-hmm.
support that segment of the population so that
Yeah.
we know how we're targeting, we know who we're speaking to? And in turn, it feeds into advertising, it feeds into sales and business development. But most importantly,
Yeah.
it allows you to serve their needs and play into their needs and understand them. And so I think any business that's going to do a broad brushstroke of
Yeah.
my target is everybody, and we hear it a lot. We go, whoa, let's back up. Let's look at the segments here, and let's look at how we can compartmentalize to a degree so that we can hone in on that segment and derive data. Because otherwise your data is going to be totally a mess, right?
Yeah.
You could go out there and say, I'm going to put a survey out and I'm going to survey this number of people from this age range to that age range. And if you haven't sectioned down your questions,
Yeah.
your answers aren't going to be as valid,
No, I understand what you're saying.
right?
Yeah, no, and I
So
understand
that's
what
why
you're
they
saying.
ask what age range you're at. When you answer a
Yeah.
survey, it's like, what's your marital status? What's your age range?
Yeah.
What's your revenue? And I think it's really important that we look at that. And I think that the Chris O show, I think you've been doing that without realizing you've been doing it, because I've seen how you've set up the Muskoka Unlimited sections, and
Yeah.
I can see that they're all based on points of interest. So you're funneling based on points of interest.
Yes. Not everybody is going to read everything. Not everyone is going to be interested in every podcast. No, there are definitely, like you said, segments, but I mean, there's segments within the overall thing. So the overall thing is we can be inclusive, but there will be a certain amount of targeted stories to a younger crowd. There'll be a certain amount of targeted stories to an older crowd, to a more conservative or a more liberal minded person. Like there are things that are kind of like, sometimes I'll purposely do stuff to just really like hone in on like people's kind of almost extreme political ideologies by just being contrarian, right? And sometimes I believe everything I write, and then sometimes I just throw things in there just to test the waters and see where people's thought process is at, to get a little bit of a rise, maybe being a little more inflammatory or exaggerative on purpose, right? And saying, okay, let's play with the game, right? Let's play the game a little bit and have some fun. And most people who know me know that I'm just certain things I'm just doing on purpose to do that, but that the overall message is what the overall message is. Like today, which you didn't read it yet, but you can read about how the column I wrote that was about how it's not just Pride Month, even though that's all anybody knows about. I mean, I was way kinder with my words, but basically saying it's also National Indigenous History Month.
It is.
It is
Yeah.
also Italian Canadian Heritage Month. It is also Portuguese Heritage Month, and it is also Filipino Heritage Month in Canada. But nobody knows about those because they're not being as promoted. So then I did my little spiel. I talked about each like of those groups, not so much the Indigenous, because I was like, a lot of people do know it's Indigenous History Month because there's been a little more promotion than that, like kind of secondary to the Pride Month. And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
I went into each of like those other ethnic groups and why we need to
Mhm.
celebrate them. And then I said, I'm not, and I said I'm not mad at like the Pride or Indigenous communities for getting top billing. I don't blame them. I think that's great. I blame the media and the schools and the businesses who are not recognizing everybody else who deserve recognition too. And then I pretty much said, and you guys can go read every single word I wrote because
I
it's
got
actually
it. I'm
yeah,
on your site. So just for the folks who haven't met you before,
yeah,
I'm at gokaunlimited.com.
yeah,
Soon to be the Chris O Show rebranded. So I'm
yeah,
super stoked about that. Um, views, news, podcasts, and more. I mean, you know yourself,
yeah,
which I love. And to me, this is a view, right?
yeah.
The viewpoint here, honoring heritage in June. 3 amazing ethnic communities need to be equally celebrated this month. And I think that's incredible that you're highlighting that.
Yeah. And so basically, like, and you can read it and everybody can go read it if you haven't read it. But basically, the message is everyone should be celebrated. And I mean, everybody, like, hey, celebrate Pride, celebrate Indigenous history, celebrate all of them together. And that's actually the most inclusive you can be is by embracing each other and
Yeah.
celebrating each other, not just saying this and almost not playing that this is more important than this, but saying we're all equally
Yeah.
important and we should all be celebrated together. And that's kind of the message in there. Because I'm like, go ahead, have your flags and party and do what you got to do, but don't forget our contributions of our ancestors to this to this great country and all the good stuff we did. And in fact, that without people of Italian descent and Roman descent, and we're talking Romans as in the ones from the Italian peninsula, you'd have nothing you love to use every day on a daily basis. So
Well, so I did not know that Marconi sent the first transatlantic radio message from the Marconi station in Glace Bay, Nova Scotia.
mm-hmm, exactly.
I had no idea. Well, I think I have a
You
vague
probably
recollection. But school
I've been
school
there.
history class was a far cry go for me.
I've been there. It's a great the Marconi Museum over there is amazing.
So
It's
cool.
awesome. Yeah. So
And I didn't know about Luigi Road in Huntsville,
yeah,
and why it exists as a homage to Italian immigrants.
yeah.
That's
So it's
pretty
not
cool.
really I don't know if it was an homage or if it was just because there's so many Italians working at the tannery back then, but yeah,
Maybe.
that's
Where
probably
was the tannery? I know
up
we're going down
Luigi
a little
Road.
off topic, off Luigi Road. What is there now? What is there
I
in
don't
its
know. I haven't been there. It's something I've always been like, I was like, I should really do a story on that. Like, what's there now? Anyways, yeah, no. So it's just it's one of those things where I mean, yes, there's a personal reason for that, and there's a personal connection to that. I get it, but it was Meucci. I forgot his first name. Sorry, there's a whole article on about him that he actually was the first person to invent the phone. And then Alexander Graham Bell, you can go read the article I wrote about it, actually waited till his patent ran out because Meucci was an Italian American immigrant who didn't speak good English and understand English well, and he ended up having the patent expire, and Alexander Graham Bell ended up patenting someone else's work, and everyone but Canada has acknowledged that Meucci was the true inventor of the phone, including the United States government. But everyone but Canada has acknowledged that. So anyway, so I like to throw that in there. And if you go through the list of Roman, and we're the descendants of them from the peninsula, right? If you go through the list of those things that the Romans invented, it's insane. Someone should just go look it up. But like aqueducts, so
Yeah,
like the whole sewage system, newspapers, like the papyrus, like all that stuff. Like it's crazy. Like the list is insane. So I'm sitting there and going, everything that we take for granted that we use every day is because of that culture. And then it's like you can't even give them their month in Canada.
right.
Like, and I'm talking about, the we overall can't give them their month, right? Like, so it's like, I was feeling a little bit passionate. But then my
But
Portuguese friends need shout outs too. I gotta give my Portuguese friends shout outs. Even my Filipinos, gotta give them shout outs too. Like they're like getting
100%.
shafted. So
Well, I mean, I think, but that's part of where your brand is headed, right? There's this development of there's journalism, and then there's opinion and storytelling. And tell
yeah.
me about how do you define those pillars between a journalistic approach and something that a writer is passionate about and has a view on?
So I think a journalism approach is more very much the hows, the what, the who's, the where's, that kind of thing, right? It's a very factual. You try and be less alliterative. You try and be a little more, just the facts, right, or whatever, right? With I mean, a little bit. There's always going to be
Yeah.
a little bit of creativity to it, but you're trying to be as unbiased and as just present the story as best it
Mhm.
as possible, right?
Yeah.
It's not always easy to do, but you try and do it. Like so, whenever, like, say I do my soccer column every week, right? And so I mix like international stuff. I'll put in some national stuff. I'll put in some like professional local stuff, professional overseas stuff, and then I'll put like the hyper local Muskoka Club stuff happening. Well, the Muskoka Club stuff is like literally straight. Here's the report on what happened. This is
Right.
the score. These are the kids
Right.
that scored for our teams. Blah blah blah. Right. Whereas the beginning often is a lot of opinion and viewpoints. So it's actually a perfect mix of actual just straight journalism reporting on the facts, and then part of it has like that kind of like, here's what I think about this stupid guy or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And or here's why I think I'm really optimistic about this situation, so and then backing up your opinion with the facts that right? So that's more the opinion side of viewpoint. You should always pack up your opinions with some sort of factual base.
Mhm.
But like the straight journalism is like, I interviewed this person or that person. Here's the statistics I research. Here's this, here's whatever facts, right? Like this happened on this day, and this many people were, say that they're voting conservative because of this. And this is what this person says about it and whatnot, right? I mean, for that's just an example. Or you do a scientific story, you interview three different people, you also get all the data and all the details and everything. That's fun stuff to do too, right? So, and
Mhm.
then journalism, there's also hard news, like what we're just talking about, like politics and
Yep.
police reports and science. And then there's softer news like art shows and um people features, right? Like human interest stories, like the soft fun news, the fashion stories, the arts and entertainment, whatever. Sports is a mix of both. Like it can be it's actually the perfect mix of both because it can be that hard news, like this is what happened last night or this is what happened today, as well as that, Christine Sinclair is retiring and let's celebrate her awesomeness. right? It can be that mix of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's the differences. I love talking to people because people are always like, that's good journalism. I'm like, no, that was actually an opinion viewpoint that someone did, or even myself, right? And I'm like, that's not real journalism. That's, yeah, I did a little bit of journalism to research the facts and stuff, but I'm like, no, that's an opinion piece. And you have been confused by the media in the past 10 years that think that opinion pieces and unbalanced biased
Yeah.
stories are actual news, but they're not, right? They're not journalism. They're
Yeah.
whatever it is. You know what I mean? They're
In other
glorified glorified blogs, as I like to say. But anyways, yes.
well, in hard news today, the Bank of Canada rate came down by
I saw that.
0.25 basis points.
Only 3 more points to go.
What are you waiting for?
No, so I was just telling my friend Julia. So my friend Julia and I recorded a podcast, which is going to come, which will be out soon, probably before ours airs. And she's a realtor in the GTA. Her and I went to high school together. And so we were chatting about this, and I told her, I said, we ended up having a mortgage renewal right at the end of last year. So I just did it for a year
Right.
on the advice
Yeah.
of every intelligent financial person I know. They're like, don't go longer than a year. It's going to get lower. Go for a year. So they're like, you're going to be hurting this year, but it'll be better on the back end. And I'm like, no
Yeah.
problem. So that's what I'm waiting for, is at the end of this year for it to drop 3 more points so I can go a little longer term next time.
And you
There you
think that's
go.
actually going to happen?
I hope so. I hope so. It might be then we go 3 years. I'm serious. Like, I don't even know. I'm sitting there and I'm just like, you gotta go lower. You're killing people over here. I mean, we're fine, but I feel bad. Like, some people signed up for stuff for like 1 point, and now it's coming due, and their mortgage is jumping by $2,000 a month,
Yep. Yep.
right?
Yeah, it's really, I'm not an economist. I dabble in economics.
Yeah,
I'm exposed to economics constantly. It impacts the businesses we work with.
yeah,
I see a lot. I've seen a lot in the past in the commercial lending side and in the personal lending side,
yeah,
as well as in the investment side. So I think there's systemic problems, and this is the opinion piece. Here's the opinion piece. This is not factual. It's factual from an experiential piece, but it's mostly my opinion, is that,
yeah,
when we were dealing with prime minus
yeah,
and low rates, I think we got really lofty in our aspirations to buy those $1 million homes. You stretch the amortization and you lower the interest rate, and bada bing, bada boom, you've got this tiny little payment. You're like, look at my dollar just stretched so far,
yes,
which is exciting. But if you don't do the math, I mean, that's why Canada has a litmus test.
yeah.
That's why if a posted rate is 2.75, you have to pass at 5%
You have to pass
to be able
double.
to afford that mortgage. So I feel so badly for
Yeah.
people who tried to squeeze into a market where the prices were high and the
Oh,
interest rates were low,
yeah,
because they're not in a good way. Like, a lot of people are looking at that. And then the other piece of the puzzle here is people have used their houses traditionally as bank accounts.
yeah,
So interest rates are low. Great. Let's take out as much equity as possible. And
yeah,
people that took out the equity that knew how to make their money work for them,
yeah,
fantastic. But the people who took out their equity to buy more commodity instead
yeah.
of investment, they're stuck. They're not in a good place.
No, I know.
You
Like,
know,
yeah,
so
we took out money, but each time we did it to make improvements to the house,
that's an investment.
right? Investing back in the house, and then to sever the lot that's for sale. Everybody who's listening, don't forget, lot Muskoka Road 3 North, 538 will be your street number, and it's a great lot, half an acre. You can do, it's R2 zoning. You can put a little duplex. I'm telling every podcast I do, I'm mentioning my lot.
Okay, so really the question is, who wants to be Chris's neighbor?
Everyone should want to be my neighbor. I'm the nicest neighbor.
I think you should offer some neighborly perks, like you know, like
Uh,
you're
I'll,
gonna
I'll
barbecue
host
across
yeah,
the fence and
I'll host a barbecue. We'll be great neighbors. It'll be awesome.
um but getting back to your show and your podcast and everything. Thank you, by the way, for letting me hang out on your podcast. I
No,
enjoy
thanks
it.
for
And
coming.
it's weird doing a Zoom. Like normally I come into the studio and we're in the
I know
studios.
we hang out in the studio together.
This
I
is
know.
totally new. So it's kind of fun. As you're building that, as you're rebranding and building it, are
Yeah.
you looking for other contributors? Are you looking at like profile, going back to your audience segmentation?
Yeah.
Would you be interested in looking at contributors who actually also match consumer interest
Yeah,
in
100%. Always want that. The only thing that I find, and then we've had some really good people over the years. Right now, I have a co-op student from Huntsville High School, Emily
oh,
Lakatos, who's been doing a lot of photography for us, right?
yeah.
And she's been a great contributor. Like she's coming up, she got a Huntsville art crawl photo essay she's gonna do, and it'll probably be up by the time this airs. But she did like a Huntsville art crawl. So another one she did about she actually went and took a ton of photos of just significant sites in town so I could have them on files so I didn't have to go do it and stuff like that. But then she's come to some of the podcast interviews at the Hunters Bay Radio Studio when we've done them that. So she's been getting like a well-rounded thing. Um, but then there's been other people over the years, like, Amy Sinclair's done some fitness articles. Candace did a couple articles about being a PSW. A little shout out because we're going to start doing a few podcasts, a few healthcare podcasts with Candace about her PSW work and some
Oh,
advice.
fantastic.
Yeah. Well,
Yep.
she's really become a specialist with Alzheimer's over the years and really studied that and like
Great.
taken courses and all that stuff and has experience. So she's going to be like doing some podcasts with me about that, just to give some information to people and whatnot on that kind of thing. And that's a huge thing, especially in our aging communities, right? So yeah, so there's some cool stuff happening like that with contributors like that, knowledgeable. And I'm always looking for more. If you have something like I really want to write about this, it's like, yeah, contribute now, help us
Yep.
grow, and then we'll hook you up on the back end. Believe me, like that's what we'll do. And if you're any business out there trying to help an aspiring media company get off the ground, give me a shout. I'll develop some very good introductory rates to help us get off the ground and really take things to the next level. Like one of the things that the plan is to grow is to actually have like an in-house studio with cameras and stuff, right? Where we can kind of hang out, across the table, have a coffee or tea or a tequila or whatever we want, and have some and just have some fun chatting about whatever, right? And so that's kind of part of the extension and growth and adding more video content, like you said, telling those stories. Like
Mhm.
that's part of, but it takes time, it takes money, and I got 2 kids to feed. So we got to do balance. And so yeah, so that's all part of the plan, as well as growing the actual online content. And I'd love to have more writers, more contributors, and more people coming on the show. If you're interested, if you like the podcast and you got some cool stuff to talk about, let's talk about it, right? So
Yeah, absolutely. And something on the back end, it would be great to get all your data. Like again, digital
yeah,
media is all about data now. People are
yeah,
spending their money. They want to know what their return is and and you have a great audience.
yeah.
So
It's
maybe the
small,
listeners out there can,
small but mighty. Very loyal audience, that's for sure. So
when you say mighty, what does that mean?
mighty meaning they're active. They're
Okay.
active. So they'll comment on things they like. They'll share things with their friends that they like. Um, they they're mighty in the sense that they're loyal. So like some media companies have this many people, but how many actually are that loyal to them, or it's just because it's convenient, right? And how many, if it's a story that doesn't really interest them, actually look at it, right? And where we have stories that sometimes get 2,000 unique views, and which is pretty good for any media company in a small place like Muskoka. I know some people get a little more depending on the topic, but for not being for being like just over a year doing this again back in the game, You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like that's not bad. And but then we have like, there's a few hundred people a day who always check in with us as the
Mhm.
immediate base, and then it
Mhm.
grows from there, depending on the topic, right? And so
Yeah.
sometimes it's like boom, boom, boom. This was a huge story, and then it might be a little slower, but those are our main base, and then it goes boom, another huge story, right? Depending on what we're talking about. I do a hospital
Yeah.
story, and it's like 3,000, 4,000, 5. It just keeps growing the number, right? On that, and even like weeks later, because it says hospital Muskoka in it, people are new IP people are like new IP addresses are clicking into it, right? Um,
I love that you're on the pulse of that back end, right? And I think,
yeah,
if it's not a subscription model and it's an advertising model, really honing in on that audience analytics piece is going to
yeah,
go far
yeah,
in the advertising model, which you know all about anyway. But
yeah. No, no, and
we have people to help you with that, Chris.
it's true. I do. I have Kyla giving me all kinds of help and advice, and it's awesome. It's awesome. So we even shouted out other media companies because I'm nice. Because
You
I'm
know, it's a small world. I think, everybody, I really, you remember that theory about 6 degrees of
yeah,
separation?
yeah,
I'm seriously down to honestly 1 and 2 degrees of separation at this point.
yeah.
To in at least within the province, and actually, yeah, I've done it out of Canada where I've done a direct hit. I went to meet the Deputy Prime Minister of Ireland just by sending his office a letter.
Oh, that's
1 degree of
awesome.
separation. But like,
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
seriously, like I think we are closer than we think.
yeah,
And
hundred
I think
percent.
that's why it's so incredibly important to edify each other.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And another thing I was gonna say, and I love that when you say that, like it's easy sometimes. People don't think it's that easy. I mean, it depends what industry you're in. Like, but because I've been in the media 20 plus years, because I
Yeah.
have somewhat of a well-known thing and a bit of a reputation. And I like anytime I send a request to someone that's a little more famous, I send my LinkedIn profile because I'm like,
Yeah.
here, check me out. You can, you vet me before you send it off to, and then the next thing it's like I'm interviewing Brett Kissel, who's a great dude, awesome dude, before he came to Muskoka for another time to play on his current tour. Then I was talking to Colin James, a Canadian
Yeah.
icon,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, and that's why I love what you said about like the Prime Minister of Ireland, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just
Yeah.
sometimes you just reach out to people because you're in the right industry and the right thing, and good things happen, and you meet and you talk to the coolest people in the world, right? And so I
I think
love
it
that.
boils down to alignment. Like
Yeah,
you care about something they care about, and there's this mutual concern and desire for action.
yeah,
That to me, that's what makes business happen, right? Is a collaborative business as well, and even in stakeholder relations that
yeah.
we work in. It's pulling the right people together that share a common goal,
I love it.
and or a common concern that they feel they can solve. And so, we throw the word out alignment a lot.
Yeah.
I know my chiropractor does, but
That's a dad joke. That's a
it's
dad
totally a
joke,
dad
Kyla.
joke. But yeah, it's I think it's really cool. And I am glad that you and I have stayed connected. We've known each other for years and years and years. And
Yeah, a long time now.
yeah,
At least
really long
at
time.
least 15 years. I was thinking back. I think it was 10,
Yeah.
15, in between 10
Yeah.
and 15 years, something like that. At least 10, at least a decade now.
Crazy, eh? And yeah, I think about that too, and in the people that we have locally. And I think that's why it's so cool for you to have that hyper local focus in Huntsville, is that when you've cultivated such a strong community,
Yeah.
a mighty following, as you say,
Yeah.
um, you get things done faster, and you can help outsiders coming in,
Yes.
which I think is why they're drawn to listening to the show as well, right? It's like,
Yeah.
I have that, you have that eagle vision, you have that bird's eye view of a lot of what's going on outside of our region. I'm refraining from using the M word. And, but within that hyper local core, you know who's who, and you know what's what, and you
Yeah. Yeah.
know
Yeah.
how to direct people. And, I think that's really valuable information.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. And I think that the more people that come in, they need to we're gonna go old school. We're going old school on this, Kyla. Old school. All right. On that note, we should call it quits because I probably get fired up.
I I love it. I think that's why. So when you introduce this, okay, here's another little plug.
All
At
right.
the, I feel like you and I have these amazing conversations where we do this, like it's like
Yeah.
up down or like we
Yeah. Yeah.
shoot off, and in my mind I'm like, what was the agenda?
There's
What's
no agenda.
chapter one? What happened in chapter two? You know, at 2 minutes in, we start talking about this. It's like put the dots in there and go, okay, if you want to hear about this, go to jump to 4 minutes in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think I could do that for sure. We talk about this at 4 minutes. This is this. You want to hear a shout out to two ladies who owe me money? You put it there.
Right. There you go. Well, I learned a lot about your business and I'm still learning a lot about it. So I'd
Yeah,
love to talk offline about it,
yeah, yeah. It's
for
evolving.
sure.
It's
And
evolving.
thanks for letting me introduce my awesome humans as well that
Oh
have
yeah,
joined
they're
our
great
team.
people. They're great
Yeah.
people.
So, and I know they can help you too. So I'm excited for that. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Well,
All
thanks,
right.
Kyla.
To be continued,
To
right?
be continued offline and online again because we always do a podcast every year. About once a year, I think we do a
I think
podcast.
so. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Something like that. So,
Yep.
anyways, thank you to everybody. Thank you to Kyla and her wonderful team for allowing her the time to hang out. So, and thank you to everyone who's listening, whatever channel you're listening on. I got to get on Apple. I'm not on Apple yet. I'm just on Spotify and YouTube and then my blog, but we got to throw stuff everywhere. Just like throw it everywhere and let people find us. So, anyways, wherever you're listening, thank you so much. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, share, like, do all the good stuff. And if you're a business, hit up my friend Tyler Taylor. All right, ciao for now, everybody.